Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam to all the Vaishnavas listening to me. We'll continue with the 35th question of the chapter Shri Krishna of Sambandha Part of Shri Bhaktivinoda Vani Vaibhav. And before that, let us offer our prayers at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and all our previous acharyas. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तद्काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्यैव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So let us start with the 35th question of Shri Krishna chapter, which is, how many types of manifest Vraja pastimes are there? Answer is, the manifest pastimes of Vraja are of two types, eternal and occasional. The Astakaliya or eightfold pastimes of Vraja are eternal, where other pastimes such as killing of Putana and leaving to go to a faraway place are occasional. 36th question is, what can one learn from killing of the demons? Answer is, through the pastimes of killing of the demons, one indirectly learns about Krishna. 37th question is, does the Supreme Lord have a form or no form? Answer is, because of his inconceivable potency, the Supreme Lord is formless and simultaneously he has a spiritual form. If we say that the Lord cannot have a spiritual form, we are denying his inconceivable potency. 38th question is, why do the Vedas declare that Supreme Lord is formless? Answer is, a material object has a gross form, but the Supreme Lord does not have such a form. That is why we cannot see him with our material senses. Therefore, the Vedas have sometimes described the Supreme Lord as formless. 39th question is, should one consider the Supreme Lord has no form or he has a form? Answer is, the Supreme Lord has no form and he has a form. We can understand that those who accept one of these truths and neglect the other do not see with both their eyes. 40th question is, what is the definition of Lord's form? Answer is, according to Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord's form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. The Supreme Form exists beyond the material creation and is transcendental. 41st question is, how is it appropriate that the Supreme Lord simultaneously has no form and has a form? Answer is, it is useless to argue over whether the Supreme Lord has no form or has a form. The Supreme Lord does not have a material form. He possesses a form that is transcendental, spiritual, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, and beyond material perception. This form can only be approached by his devotees. The conclusion is that for the material eyes, the Supreme Lord is formless, and for spiritual eyes, he has a form. Therefore, we accept that he has no form and he has a form. 42nd question is, how is it possible for the Lord to simultaneously be individual and be all-pervading? Answer is, because of his inconceivable potency, the Supreme Lord can simultaneously be all-pervading and be an individual. This understanding is impossible for those who are not on the level of Brahman. 43rd question is the Supreme Lord compelled to follow the rules and regulations that have been created either by him or by the living entities? Answer is, the physical rule is that if you add a foot on rope to another foot of rope, it will be 2 feet of rope, never 3 feet of rope. However, the Supreme Lord is not bound by such rules. He is the creator of the rules. Therefore, he is not forced to follow his own rules. 44th question is the Supreme Lord constrained by time and space? Answer is, our ideas are constrained by the idea of time and space, but God is above the constraint. 45th question is, when does the concept of formlessness and having a form vanquish? Answer is, the absolute truth is beyond all sampradayas. Therefore, the swan-like devotees should not argue whether the Lord has no form or he has a form. As soon as devotional service is awakened in one's heart, one will automatically realize both features of the Lord. 46th question is, why is no one equal to or greater than Krishna? Answer is, 64 transcendental qualities are fully manifest in Krishna, who is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. The last 4 qualities are present only in Sri Krishna. Even his opulent forms do not possess them. Not having these 4 qualities, Narayana, who is the Lord of the spiritual sky and whose form is fully spiritual, possesses the other 60 qualities in full. Demigods like Lord Shiva possess 55 qualities in small quantities. The living entities possess the first 50 qualities in minute quantities. Shiva, Brahma, Surya, Ganesha and Indra are all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. They are qualitative incarnations of the Lord. They are empowered by the Lord and are awarded the responsibility of managing the material creation. Actually, they are all servants of the Supreme Lord. By their mercy, many persons have attained pure devotional service. 47th question is, how does Sri Krishna behave towards a surrendered soul? Answer is, Sri Krishna is always pure, self-satisfied and an affectionate master to his devotees. If Krishna wants to save someone, who can kill him? Krishna is the creator of all the rules and regulations. 48th question is, why is Sri Krishna the reservoir of all transcendental pastimes? Answer is, Sri Krishna is the supreme absolute truth and his pastimes are pure. The illusory energy Maya is his distant maidservant. To benefit the living entities, the most merciful Lord Hari manifested his transcendental pastimes. 49th question is, what do the Vedas say regarding the transcendental form of the Supreme Brahman? Answer is, the Chandra Yoga Upanishad states, Bahusham, the Supreme Lord desired to become many, and the Atareya Upanishad states, Sa Eksata. He glanced at material nature. At that time, there was no existence of material mind or eyes. This means that the mind by which the Lord thought and the eyes by which he glanced were existing before material creation. The Vedas therefore give evidence that the Supreme Brahman has transcendental mind and eyes. 50th question is, what considerations are there regarding the 6 opulences of the Supreme Lord? Is the impersonal Brahman dependent or independent? Answer is, the Supreme Lord is the inconceivable absolute truth. He is full of 6 opulences: wealth, fame, beauty, knowledge, power and renunciation. These qualities are always present in the Lord. A question may arise among them, which is the possessor and which is the possessed. The possessor is he in whom these qualities are found. For example, the tree is the possessor and the branches are possessed. The body is the possessor and the hands and legs are possessed. The beauty of the Lord's transcendental body is the possessor and the other qualities are possessed. Wealth, power and fame are possessed. Knowledge and renunciation have emanated from the vast effulgence of fame. They are the qualities of fame. They themselves are not separate qualities. Knowledge of changeless spirit and renunciation of matter are the parts of the body of the impersonal Brahman. The impersonal Brahman is the effulgence emanating the spiritual worlds. The unchanging, inactive, formless, qualityless Brahman is not the independent highest truth. It is the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is independent highest truth. The light of fire is not independent, it is a quality of fire. With this, we complete the 15th chapter and move on to 16th chapter of the Sambandha part, which is the Lord's incarnations. So the first question is, what is the science of Lord's incarnation? Why does the Supreme Lord appear in this world? Answer is, when the conditioned souls receive a body according to their nature, the Supreme Lord Krishna, by his inconceivable potency, agrees to accompany them by incarnating and enjoying pastimes with them. When the living entities accept the body of a fish, the Lord accepted his fish incarnation, Matsya. Matsya is without a dand or spine. When the living entities accept the body of Vrajadanda or half-grown spine, the Lord incarnates as Kurma. When Vrajananda gradually becomes Merudanda or fully grown spine, the Lord incarnates as Varaha. The living entities accept the combined position of human and animal. The Lord accepts his incarnation of Narsimha. When living entities are short, he appears as Vamana. When the living entities are uncivilized, he comes as Parashurama. When they are civilized, he appears as Ramachandra. When the living entities possess the wealth of practical knowledge, Lord Krishna himself appears. When the living entities develop the tendency for argument, the Lord appears as Buddha. Moreover, they are the atheistic, the Lord comes as Kalki. These are well-known facts. During the gradual development in the hearts of living entities, the Lord incarnates in the form of corresponding to the mood of the devotees. The source and the activities of his forms are untouched by material contamination. After due consideration, the sages have divided the history of living entities' advancement into 10 divisions. Each one has different symptoms. Each successive mood is superior to the previous one. The Lord's 10 incarnations correspond to these 10 moods. Some learned scholars have divided the living entity's advancement into 24 divisions and have stated that there are 24 incarnations. Yet, others have divided it into 18 and have stated 18 incarnations. Second question is, what is the scientific consideration about the truth of Lord's incarnation? Answer is, from an invertebrate living entity up to a fully developed vertebrate human being, some sages have defined 8, 18 or 24 corresponding incarnations of the Lord. Most authentic sages agree that there are 10 principal incarnations. From the conditional state up to the end of a living entity's progress, the sages have defined 10 stages. The first stage is life as an invertebrate. Second, a thin vertebrate. Third, a vertebrate. Fourth, a raised vertebrate or animalistic human being. Fifth, a small human being. Sixth, an uncivilized human being. Seventh, a civilized human being. Eighth, a knowledgeable human being. Ninth, a most knowledgeable human being. And the 10th stage is devastation. According to these stages of development of the living entities, the 10 incarnations of the Supreme Lord appear and enjoy transcendental pastimes. The 10 incarnations are Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narsimha, Vamana, Parshurama, Rama, Krishna, Buddha, and Kalki. Third question is, who is the original incarnation? Answer is, with a desire to create the material worlds, Shankarsana, who is a planetary portion of Krishna, lies in the casual ocean as the original Purusha and glances over Maya. This act of glancing is the original cause of material creation. Fourth question is, why does the Supreme Lord incarnate? Answer is, the Supreme Lord has two kinds of pastimes. The first is to create the material world and to maintain it by establishing stringent laws. The dry speculators can understand these pastimes to some extent. The second is the Lord's pastime within this material world, where the living entities are his companions. Because of their desire for material enjoyment, some living entities fall from their constitutional position. Whatever situation they go through in the association of matter, the Supreme Lord responds accordingly. The principal cause for the Lord's appearance is his causeless mercy towards the living entities. Fifth question is, what is necessity for worshipping the deity form of the Lord? All formless truths have some representation. A representation, although different from the object it represents, symbolizes the mood of the object. Watches represent formless time, essays represent subtle knowledge, and pictures represent acts of mercy. In the same way, there is no doubt that one gets benefit in performing devotional service to the deity. Sixth question, is deity worship of the Vaishnava idol worship? Answer is, the deity worshipped by the Vaishnavas is not an idol, which is separate form of the Lord. The deity is representation that invokes devotion to the Lord. Seventh question, is the deity the direct manifestation of the Lord? The deity of the Lord cannot be anything other than the direct manifestation of the Lord. Just as in the industry or in science, every unseen object has a gross image. The Lord, unseen by material eyes, has an image in the form of the deity. Because of their devotional propensity, the pure devotees constantly experience that the deity is truly the Supreme Lord. Connection between an electric light and a generator is understood only by seeing the result when the electric light is switched on. What will those who are ignorant of electricity understand when they see a generator? Similarly, what will those who have no devotion in their hearts say about the deity except idol? Eighth question, what is the difference between the deity worshipped by the devotees and the symbols of the mental speculators? At first, the Lord's form manifests in the spiritual consciousness of the living entities, and thus he appears in their hearts. Then the devotees see no difference between the spiritual form within their heart and the external deity form. However, the mental speculations do not worship the deity in this way. According to their opinion, Brahman is imagined within a deity made of material elements, and that image is there as long as the worship continues. Thereafter, the form remains a material object and nothing else. Ninth question is everyone qualified to worship the deity? Answer is, worship of the Lord's deity is the foundation of religious principles for human beings. Great devotees have seen the form of Supreme Lord by pure knowledge, and they meditate on this pure spiritual form. When the hearts of the devotees spread towards the material world, a reflection of that spiritual form is illustrated in the material world. The form of the Supreme Lord has thus manifest as a deity by the mercy of the Mahajans. For Uttama Adhikaris, the deity is always the spiritual form of the Lord. For Madhyama Adhikaris, the deity is a spiritual form in their heart. For Kanishta Adhikaris, the deity at first appears material, but by gradual purification of their intelligence, They accept the deity as the spiritual form of the Lord. Therefore, it is the duty of all kinds of devotees to engage in the worship of Lord's deity. There is no need to worship any concocted god. The worship of the eternal form of the Lord is auspicious. 10th question is, how do mental speculators who do not accept the deity worship the deity? Answer is, some people establish the devotion of the Supreme Lord's deity within their self, their mind, or their material world. They then worship that form, considering it non-different from the Supreme Lord. The followers of some religions, due to attachment of argument, imagine the Lord's form within their mind and worship that form. They do not accept the external deity form of the Lord. Actually, all these forms are his deities. Question 11 is, how do the swan-like Vaishnavas see Sri Jagannatha Deva? Answer is, the worship of Sri Jagannatha is viewed in two ways. Superstitious and ignorant people think it is idolatry to worship God Almighty, who has appeared in the shape of carved wood for the salvation of the people of Odisha. However, the Saragrahi Vaishnavas accept the deities as eternal truth, as Vyasa has explained in Vedanta Sutra. 12th question is, how did Sri Bhaktivinoda refute the atheistic philosophy that is opposed to deity worship? Answer is, some are startled at the idea of worshipping the deity, Sri Murti. They say it is idolatry to worship the deity, which is an idol made by an artist and introduced by Beelzebub himself. Worshipping such an object would arouse the jealousy of God and limit his omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. We reply to them in the following way: brothers, candidly understand the subject and do not allow yourself to be misled by sectarian dogma. God is not jealous. He is without a second. Beelzebub or Satan is only an imaginary figure or a being used in an allegory. An allegorical or imaginary person should not be allowed to act as an obstacle to bhakti. Those who believe God is impersonal simply identify him with some power or quality of nature. In fact, he is above nature, her laws and her rules. His holy wish is law, and it is sacrilege to confine his unlimited excellence by identifying him with such attributes as omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. Attributes which may exist in created objects such as time and space. His excellence is such that he has mutually contradicting powers and qualities, which are ruled by his supernatant self. He is identical with his all-beautiful person, and his powers of omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence cannot be found elsewhere. His holy and perfect person exists eternally in the spiritual world and is simultaneously existing in every created object and place in full. This understanding excels all other ideas about the deity. Mahaprabhu also rejected idolatry, but considering deity worship to be the only unexceptionable means of spiritual culture, it has been shown that God is personal and all beautiful. Vyasa and other sages have seen God's beauty with their soul's eyes. They have left us descriptions. Of course, words carry the grossness of matter, but truth is perceivable in those descriptions. According to those descriptions, one delineates a deity and sees the Supreme Lord of one's heart with intense pleasure. Brothers, is that wrong or sinful? Those who say that God has no form, either material or spiritual, and then imagine a false form of worship are idolatrous. But those who see the spiritual form of the deity in the soul's eyes carry that impression as far as possible to the mind and then frame an emblem for the satisfaction of the material eye and for the continual study of higher feelings. They are by no means idolatrous. When you see a deity, do not even see the image itself. See the spiritual form of the image. Then you are a pure theist. Idolatry and deity worship are two different things. But my brothers, you simply confound one with the other in hastiness. To tell you the truth, deity worship is the only true form of worship of the Lord, without which you cannot sufficiently cultivate your religious feelings. The world attracts you through your senses, and as long as you do not see the God in the objects of your senses, you live in an awkward position, which scarcely helps you secure your spiritual elevation. Place a deity in your house, consider God the guardian of the house, and the food that you take his prasada. The flowers and scents are also his prasada. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch can be spiritually satisfied. Worship God with a holy heart. God will know and judge you by your sincerity. In this way, Satan and Beelzebub will have nothing to do with you. All sorts of worship are based on the principle of deity worship. Look into the history of religion and you will understand this noble truth. The Semitic idea of patriarchal God, both in the pre-Christian period of Judaism and post-Christian period of Christianity and Mohammedanism, is nothing but a limited idea of deity worship. The monarchic idea of Jupiter among the Romans and Indra among the Aryan Karmakandis is also based on the same principle. The idea of a force and Jyotirmaya Brahma of the meditators is a formless energy of the Saktas is also a very faint view of the deity. In fact, the deity is the truth differently exhibited by different people according to their beliefs. Even Gemini and Comte, who were not prepared to accept a creating God, have prescribed certain forms of deity worship simply because they are impelled by the soul. And we meet people who have adopted the cross, the salagram sila, the lingam, and such emblems as indicators of the Lord within. Furthermore, if divine love, justice, and compassion can be portrayed by the pencil and expressed by the chisel, why shouldn't the personal beauty of the deity, embracing all other qualities, be portrayed in poetry and in pictures and carved by the chisel for the benefit of man? If a word provokes thought, a watch indicates time, and a sign tells us of history, why shouldn't a picture or deity bring higher thoughts of and feelings for the transcendental beauty of the divine person? With that, we finish the 16th chapter and we move on to the 17th chapter of the topic, Transcendental Mellows. So the first question is, why is Sri Krishna the personification of all nectarian rasas? Why is he unique in this regard? Answer is, Sri Krishna is the object of the highest transcendental mellows. If one considers impartially and becomes free from the clutches of prejudice, one will conclude that in rasa form of Sri Krishna is the most suitable and the best. His other forms are eternal, spiritual, transcendental, and full of divine qualities. They are the master of Maya. Krishna also possesses all these transcendental qualities. The special characteristic of Krishna is that he displays his spiritual pastimes in this material world through his spiritual energy and allows the material senses to perceive them. When the Lord descends to this world, his behavior appears mundane, but actually he is always full of opulences. He reciprocated with the cowherd boys as their beloved friend, with his parent as their dependent child, and with his devotee who is absorbed in Madhurya Ras as their beloved Lord. yet he never failed to display his supremacy. Even while performing his pastimes as a human being, he surprised the learned community by exhibiting his superiority over the demigods, who are dependent on him. If Krishna had not mercifully displayed his most enchanting pastimes as a cowherd boy, who could realize the Supreme Lord as the object of Madhurya Ras? Second question is, are Sri Krishna's pastimes as a paramour abominable? Answer is, when Sri Krishna himself is the only enjoyer, there is no question of his pastimes as a paramour being abominable. Whenever an ordinary living entity claims to be the enjoyer, immediately the question of religiosity or irreligiosity arises. Third question is, what is the science of Sri Radha Krishna? Answer is, according to the teachings of Sriman Mahaprabhu, worship of the Lord in the mood of Madhurya Ras is the highest. In this mood, one cannot relish the transcendental mellows of devotional service unless one becomes subordinate of Sri Radhika. The Supreme Brahman is eternal Sat, full of knowledge, Chit, and full of bliss, Ananda. Sri Krishna is the personification of Sat Chit, and Sri Radhika and Sri Radha is the manifestation of Ananda. Radha and Krishna are one truth, but for the expansion of rasa, they have appeared as two. Fourth question is, what are the symptoms of ecstatic love for Krishna? Answer is, after honoring Prasad, Vijay Kumar, taking the road by the ocean, immediately departed for the house of Kashi Mishra. On seeing the waves and billows of the ocean, the mood of the ocean of transcendental mellows began to appear in his mind. He thought, "Oh, this ocean is awakening my sentiments. Although it is a material object, it is arousing my internal spiritual mood." The topic of the ocean of mellows, which the Lord always explains to me, are as follows. When my gross and subtle bodies are thrown away, I sit on the shore of the ocean of mellows in my own form as a manjari and relish transcendental mellows. Krishna alone, whose complexion is like a new cloud, is my beloved Lord. On his side stands the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. She is our controller. In other words, she is the controller of all living entities. The ocean is transformation of Radha Krishna's ecstatic love. Transcendental mellows of ecstatic love are the waves. Whenever a particular mood arises, it drowns me, a Sakhi, in the mellows of ecstatic love as I stand on the shore. Krishna is the ocean of mellows, and therefore the ocean has adopted the complexion of Krishna. The current of the ocean is Sri Radha, and therefore it appears golden. The big waves are the Sakhis, and the small waves are their maidservants. I am one of the maidservants thrown away from the ocean to the shore. Thinking in this way, Vijay became overwhelmed. Coming back to external consciousness, after some time he went before his spiritual master, offered his respectful obeisances, and sat down. With this, we finish our 17th chapter and move on to 18th chapter, called Holy Names of Sri Krishna. What is the holy name of Krishna? Answer is, the holy name of Lord Krishna is the bud of the flower of rasa. Rasa is pure and unbroken, and by the mercy of Krishna, it has been spread in the world as holy name. Second question is, which instruction in the Vedas is the best? Answer is, of all the instructions in the Vedas, the best is to chant the holy names of Hari. Third question is, how is the chanting of the holy names simultaneously the goal of life and the process of achieving that goal? Answer is, the mercy of the Supreme Lord is the highest goal of the living entities. The principal method for achieving that goal is not fruitive activities and mental speculation, because they vanish as one comes closer to the goal. The process of chanting is not like that. The holy name is non-different from the Supreme Lord, and therefore he always remains present as both the goal and the process. Fourth question is, how many types of names does the Supreme Lord have? Is it proper to consider the Lord's names as inferior or superior? Answer is, the holy names of the Lord are of two types, primary and secondary. The names given to him because he created the material world through Maya, such as the creator of the universe, maintainer of the universe, controller of the universe, sustainer of the universe, and Paramatma, are his secondary names. Some names, such as Brahman, they are beyond the jurisdiction of the three models of material nature, are also counted among his secondary names. Although these holy names award various results, they seldom award the supreme spiritual goal. The Lord's holy names that are transcendental to material time and space and are eternally present in the spiritual world are Lord's primary and spiritual names. They are names such as Narayana, Vasudeva, Janardana, Rishikesha, Hari, Achyuta, Govinda, Gopala, and Rama. These principal names are eternally present in the spiritual realm and are inseparably connected with the Supreme Lord. Fifth question is, what is the special about the name Krishna? Answer is, the holy name Krishna is the Lord's eternal name that attracts everyone towards his ecstatic love and reveals his supreme existence. Sixth question is, what is Krishna's first identification? Answer is, Krishna's first identification is the holy name Krishna. The living entity should chant Krishna's holy name and resolve to achieve his shelter. Seventh question, is the holy name a material sound vibration? Can a material tongue chant the holy name? Answer is, the holy name of Hari is not a product of material world. A pure spirit soul is situated in his constitutional position, is qualified to chant the holy name of Hari in his spiritual body. A materially conditioned living entity cannot chant the holy name through his material senses. However, when one's constitutional propensities are awakened by the mercy of Hladini potency, one is eligible to chant the holy name of the Lord. At that time, the pure name mercifully appears in the devotees' hearts and then dances on the devotion-filled tongue. The mystery of the holy name is that it is not a combination of letters but manifests as a combination of letters when it dances on a material tongue. Eighth question is, why are there different holy names for deliverance in different yugas? Answer is, after analyzing people's level of advancement, the compilers of the scriptures established the appropriate holy names to deliver people in different ages. Ninth question, what are the prescribed holy names for Satya Yuga and what is their significance? In the answer, there is given a small phrase, Narayana Paraveda, Narayana Paraksara, Narayana Paramuktir, Narayana Paragati. The meaning of this verse is that the Lord Narayana is the goal of all science, language and liberation, and he is the supreme destination. The Lord is fully realized in the form of Narayana, surrounded by his associates in Vaikuntha. The name of the absolute truth for devotees who admire his opulence is Narayana. Such devotees have a relationship with the Lord in Santarasa and are little Dasyarasa. 10th question is, what are the prescribed holy names for Treta Yuga and what is their significance? Rama Narayana Ananta Mukunda, Madhusudana, Krishna Keshava, Kamsara, Hare Vaikuntha Vamana. These are the holy names to deliver one in Treta Yuga. These names indicate Narayana's prowess. Devotees who worship the Lord with these names have a relationship in Dasya Ras and a reflection of Sakhya Ras. 12th question. What are the prescribed holy names for Dwapar Yuga and what is their significance? Hare Murari Madhu Kaita Bhare, Gopal Govind Mukund Saure Yajnesha, Narayana Krishna Vishnu Virasrayam Mam Jagadish Raksa. These are the holy names to deliver one in Dwapar Yuga. These names aim towards Krishna, who is the shelter of unsheltered persons. Devotees who worship the Lord with these names have a relationship in Shant, Dasya, Sakhya or Vatsalya Rasa. 13th question. So we'll continue from 13th question in the next session since time is up for this session. My sincere obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev and the divine couple Sri Sri Radha Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.